Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. I'm your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, The Juice, Dave Sadler. On this week's show, of course, we're going to recap UFC Fight Night Austin. We're going to go over the main card, a couple of the undercard fights as well. We're going to go over some of the headlines in MMA, including The Ultimate Fighter Season 20, and, of course, a little bit about that guy known as the Notorious One, Conor McGregor, here on this Turkey Day edition of the show, as Thanksgiving is tomorrow. And Juice, are you excited for Turkey Day tomorrow?
Does a fat kid... Wait, I am a fat kid. I'm trying to make a great parallel here. Does a fat kid love cake? Yes. I'm so excited for Thanksgiving. We should do Thanksgiving every Thursday. No? Nothing?
I could do it.
All right.
I could have turkey. I could have turkey every Thursday, probably.
Word. Yeah, no, I'm excited for Thanksgiving. Friday, I get to go back to work for triple time, so that'll be cool. And Saturday, anybody in the Chicagoland area, MMA Team Genesis is doing a seminar, and all you have to do is donate something to the Harbor House and to Toys for Tots, and there's two different seminars. One with Chicago's own Joe Goitia, who, if you know anything about MMA in Chicago, you know who Joe is, and UFC fighter Spencer Fisher going to be in town. So check out MMA Bradley /7 years if you want more info. But that's where I'll be on Saturday.
Good deal.
I might even train. How about that?
Well, let's not get ahead of yourself.
Yeah, let's not get too carried away.
Speaking of training, this past weekend, myself and one of our listeners, Billy, who's a friend of mine, he lives here in the Detroit area with me, we got an invitation. Dave and I are members of several memorabilia groups on Facebook within MMA, and one of the guys in the groups posted a event down in Toledo, Ohio, which I'm very familiar with. I went to school in Bowling Green, just south of Toledo, and I worked in Toledo for 3 years. So, anyways, he posted an event at a church in Toledo that was not only going to have one UFC fighter, but was going to have 3 UFC fighters and a Bellator fighter, and that being the main stars of Diego Sanchez and Vitor Belfort, and they were also joined by Johnny Bedford and his teammate who was on the Fight Master for Bellator, Evan Cutts. Those 4 guys are going to be at the Cedar Creek Church in Toledo this past weekend, speaking about their experiences in life, Christ, MMA, kind of all that stuff wrapped in together. Also, obviously taking photos, signing autographs, and then Johnny and Evan on Saturday morning, the Saturday I went down there, they led kind of a little mini 2-hour grappling session for some of the church participants. And so Billy and myself, we drove down there, and when we got there, we were notified that there was some ice, major ice in the northwest Ohio and southeast Michigan area that caused the shutdown of Detroit Metro Airport and I'm assuming maybe even the Toledo Airport. And because of that, Vitor Belfort, his flight was delayed. Diego Sanchez had already gotten there the night before, so he was good to go. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet Vitor Belfort, but I was able to meet Diego Sanchez, Johnny Bedford, Evan Cutts, all great guys. Got some autographs too, and great guys. And then the guy who invited me, his Levi, another listener of the show, he was able to go back Sunday because they were speaking at all the different sermon times throughout Saturday and Sunday for this church in Toledo. They got like 4 or 5 different churches in the Northwest Ohio area. He was able to go back Sunday and get and meet Vitor Belfort and get him to sign my photo that I had printed out for him on Saturday when I wasn't able to meet him. So definitely shout out to our listener Billy and our listener Levi for going down to Toledo and hooking us up. And it was just a great experience. Again, shout out to Cedar Creek Church. I don't know too many churches doing stuff like that, and they were able to pull 2 huge names in the sport of mixed martial arts. And as we were waiting in line and stuff, they said this is probably one of the biggest church functions that they've had in the history of that church down in Toledo. So I got to be hard pressed that they wouldn't do something like this again. Maybe some different fighters. I know there's a lot of fighters that have strong religious backgrounds. Of course, Dave, how many times have you played "Our God Is an Awesome God," Ben Henderson's walkout song? So maybe somebody like that, or
Are you saying I shouldn't play that song? Because that's great.
well, you can play it, and you can play that song anytime. So I was just saying it was an awesome experience, and it was really cool. And man, I wish I lived a little closer, because this was maybe the nicest church I've ever seen, Dave. They had like fountain machines for free Pepsi. They had coffee machines. They had hot chocolate machines. They had like a workouts place. They had a huge auditorium. They had a spot for your kids to go and play. I mean, it was excellent. I was like, man, I don't think we have anything around here in Detroit, at least that I know of. Anyways, it was an awesome church, and boy, it was a fun time driving down there. So just wanted to mention that to everybody.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Hold on, I'm thinking about what I want to say. This is what we're going to do for the rest of the show.
Just replay that song over and over again.
Is it weird on the new UFC game? Like, I've made my character like 3 or 4 different times, but my guy's all tatted up, and he's got like all of his moves. He's like, he wants to throw his, he's totally like a terrible guy, but he always walks out to "Our God, it's an awesome God."
Nice. Well, enough about what we're up to or what we have done, and let's get to some headlines here. And let's start off here with the Ultimate Fighter last week. We had Randa Marcos against Felice Herrig, and during the episode, we saw a lot of animosity start to being built between Randa and Felice, and I guess by extension Carla Esparza, who obviously is best friends with Felice Herrig, and kind of all of the three kind of had this triangle going on, and it really started from the fact that 7 Team Pettis members have made it into the quarterfinal round, with just one member being from Team Melendez. So obviously there's 3 teammate versus teammate matchups. And because of that, they kind of split their training sessions and saying one group would go in the morning, one group would in the afternoon. So effectively, 6 fighters of the 8 on Team Pettis wouldn't be allowed to train twice a day like they had been doing for the whole competition. And I guess they did a vote, and they said, that's fine. And then towards the end, the last day or two, Randa wanted to go and get another session in of running or lifting weights or whatever. And obviously Carla and Felice and the one group kind of took offense to that, and that kind of helped stem the animosity and whatnot. And I just wanted to bring this up. People think we usually just talk about the fight, but I wanted to bring this up because a lot of people were really bashing Felice and Carla for the way they were treating Randa. Now, during the episode and even after social media, both Carla and Felice have said, well, they haven't really shown, Randa was kind of mean to us and whatnot. And the only thing I have to say is I'm not saying Randa didn't do anything to provoke Carla or Felice or didn't say anything nasty, but if she was saying something that was that dramatic or that emotion-provoking to really draw the ire of Carla and Felice, I guarantee the cameras would have showed it and they would have edited that in the show.
Maybe. We also don't know. We also don't know how the season ends. You know what I'm saying? There may be something that she said, but it may turn out that Felice is a bad guy. Maybe Randa gets hurt and Felice fills in for Randa going forward. Maybe something happens, and the way they have it currently edited, it makes Felice look like a much bigger star to where they can promote her. Or, maybe there's something going on that we don't know. I agree. If it was something terrible like, hey, you bleepity, bleepy, bleepy, whatever, they probably would have shown it. But remember, sometimes these fights aren't necessarily shown in order either. It's all edited for TV. And another point that you brought up, I'm glad you mentioned it, was the training situation with these team, with all of the one team needing to train at the same time. That has to fall on the UFC, I think. How is there not a plan in place for one team to sweep the first round?
Well, what I suggested, I was watching it with a friend of mine, and what I'm pretty sure they've done almost every other season where they've had this situation where it's 5 or 6 of one team, in this case 7, which I believe is the most any team's ever done. The most I remember before that was the Hughes-Sarah season where Team Sarah won 6 of the 8.
Right.
Usually it's pretty even. Usually it's 5-3, 4-4. It's usually somewhere around there. 6-2 in this case, 7-1. Pretty epic. But what I suggested was the fact that the 3 opponents that are fighting, or you split up those 3 matchups, I should say. One group then goes and does the pads, hitting the bags, rolling, doing all like the fighting stuff. And then their other 3 opponents should be doing the running, the weightlifting, the cut and weight, the strength and conditioning stuff. So they're not involved mixing with each other. So you do that once. So the group that did like the fight stuff, the morning session, then does the strength and conditioning stuff in the afternoon session, and vice versa. That would have solved the problem, and they wouldn't have been rolling together and seeing what they're working on, really. And that, to me, would have solved the problem instead of then reducing the number of training that these fighters can get in. Because I think that is putting them at a disadvantage, because then you have someone like Joanne Calderwood, who in this case, she was fighting the one lone Pettis member, or the one lone Melendez member, and she got to go to both training sessions. So
Right.
She got to get in the maximum amount of training, and the other 6 girls were not. So to me, that's what should have been done, as opposed to what they did, and ended up creating a problem, and I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's a bad situation, but hey, I guess it's the nature of the beast with being on a TV show where there's time constraints and the whole 9 yards. So they'll get over it, and at least the 2 ladies who make it to the finals are given a full 6-8 week training camp to prepare themselves.
Now, one question before we get to the fight and some other things. Is the last week of this season, is that going to be next week before the coaches fight at UFC 181, or are they putting the final fight the Wednesday before the finale on the 10th? Do you know that?
Nope, but I'm on UFC.com and I'll look.
All right. Well, one issue is, again, we were talking about social media and Carla Esparza and Felice here getting a lot of negative feedback. I went on both their Facebook pages and I saw a lot of nasty comments to both women, and both, I don't know how many people like unliked the page or unfollowed her on that, but a lot of people were not very kind to those 2 girls and saying, oh, you lost a fan and all that, and maybe they were in the wrong, but it's the Ultimate Fighter house. You're in 6 weeks with all those other girls. There's no TV. All you're doing is training. You kind of get obsessed over little things. A little thing like, hey, she's going to try to get an extra training session. Normally probably isn't that big a deal, but in this case, you have nothing else to think about, really, so you kind of obsess and maybe overanalyze the situation, and it makes you angry, and nasty things are said, and I'm not really holding a lot of stock into it. I mean, stuff like this happens on The Ultimate Fighter all the time. I still think Felice and Carla are talented individuals. They're generally nice to people, but I think when you put people in that situation, Dave, it does change you. And had that happen outside in regular life where people go home and watch TV and can relax and unwind, a situation like this would probably never blow up into a huge dramatic issue. But since you're stuck in a house with these other people for 6 weeks, nothing else to do, stuff like that kind of festers, and eventually it boils over to the surface, and I think that's what we saw in this episode.
Yep. I think that Felice and Carla have both handled it real well. You're going to have haters regardless. The Felice can do nothing. She can't do anything right anyway. She's only been nice to us the times that we've met her, and no matter what she does, because she's pretty and because she's loud and all that, she can't do anything right anyway. So just do your thing, Felice. Don't forget. Well, we're gonna talk about the fight anyway.
Well, let's get to that fight here. We're talking about some other issues stemming from it, but boy, I tell you what, you and I both thought Randa had a chance to win, but we thought the experience of Feliz would eventually win out, and it possibly could be a 3-round fight, especially if Randa kind of ties her up and maybe Feliz isn't able to get off as striking as much. But I tell you what, Randa Marcos, a girl no one's ever heard of before, 28 years old, 4-1, coming out of Windsor, just barely started training at Michigan Top Team with our good friends Darren Cruikshank and Jason Fisher, gets onto the show, when some of the other original planned cast members had to fall out for various reasons, gets on the show, comes in at the number 14 seed, first fight of the season, nobody expects anything of her, takes out one of the top favorites in Tisha Torres. Now she takes out another one of the big stars, Felice Herrig, and she does so even more impressively, Dave, submitting her with an armbar in the very first round. And Randa did what we thought she needed to do to win. Get in close, tie it up, use her wrestling and grappling background. She was able to get the takedown, and then when she moved into side control, it really, honestly, Dave, it just looked like she was trapping, I believe it was the right arm of Felice Herrig, with kind of like a reverse crucifix position to start, throwing down some elbows or punches. It didn't really look like she had any arm manipulation at all. But all of a sudden, Felice Herrig taps and the fight's over. And I look at my friend and he looks at me. I was like, what just happened there? I had no idea what had gone on, and apparently the move she used, reading some different websites and columns, very common in judo. It's kind of like a judo hold with the legs to the arm to kind of almost do an arm bar with your legs as opposed to pulling it back like a traditional arm bar, and that's kind of what she did, and it caused Felice to tap, and that's a very advanced move. I've never seen that before in an MMA fight, and boy, Randa Marcos, I think, made a statement, and to me, she's no longer a 14 seed. She's a legitimate threat to win this competition now, Dave.
Yeah, she's proving herself thus far as she keeps moving through. She's going to continue to need to prove herself. I don't think she definitely doesn't have the experience level as the other girls that are left in the house. The other thing, too, that if you read, a lot of people aren't giving Felice a whole lot of credit. She was winning every second of that fight up until that point, and she got caught in a tricky submission. So, I think it's a win-win for both of these girls. Only one of them is going to get a shot at the belt. They're all UFC fighters, but yeah, I think it's a win-win. Of course, people are going to spin it any which way they want, but Felice looked very good up until the point where she got caught, and Randa was able to catch a seasoned veteran. So good for her.
So Randa will move on to the semifinal round. She will face the winner of Joanne Calderwood and Rose Namajunas here in the future. And this week's episode, or today's episode, we're going to see Aisling Daly against Jessica Penne. And just real quick, who do you favor in that one, Dave?
I don't know. I really don't. The Aisling Daly, she weirds me out. Like, I feel like if I don't pick her, like, she's gonna come attack me. I think that this might be the fight of the season. Just because you don't know. Like with Rose, she's gonna try weird things, and with certain people, that they're just gonna kind of what they're gonna do. But that Aisling Daly's a wild card for me. So I know it's a terrible answer for our show, but I don't have a clue.
I would favor Jessica Penne. I think she's maybe a little more well-rounded, but Daly is definitely a gamer, and I think you saw that in her fight against Magana. So yeah. It's definitely, I don't think, going to be an easy out for Penne, but I would favor the former Invicta champ on this one. And did you find out the listings there, Dave?
No, it tells me nothing.
Okay. Anyways, continue with your point.
Speaking of Magana, have you seen this whack job on Twitter?
Yes, with those, I guess what some would call racy photos.
Well, I guess like yeah, the photos are one thing, but like you are like the lowest part of scum of the UFC. Like like what you haven't done anything in the UFC. You haven't won a preliminary fight on the Ultimate. You haven't done anything. The only reason that you're a part of the UFC is because they have to have you in the division.
Right now.
Yeah, that's it. And it for those who don't know, like she's just posting like ridiculous things, just trying to gain attention, and that's why sometimes MMA gets a bad rap because of things like what she does.
Well, let's move on to some more headlines here, and let's talk about one of Aisling Daly's teammates. Of course, as I mentioned in my opening rundown, the notorious one, Conor McGregor. And I know normally we talk about implications while we're breaking down a fight in terms of afterwards, but we'll do it here because it spurred the juice on here because he likes to stir stuff up. So Frankie Edgar beats Cub Swanson this weekend. We'll talk about the fight breakdown here in a little bit, but he beats him. He gets a finish. And before the fight, as we mentioned, Cub Swanson was going to get a title shot if he could beat Frankie Edgar. The same was not said for the former lightweight champion. Fair enough. He has already got his shot at Aldo. I'm sure Frankie and other people in his camp, and myself included, okay, sure, that's fine. Maybe he needs to take another fight. So he beats Cub Swanson, who as of right now was going to get the title shot. So a lot of people thought, oh, well, Conor McGregor, a lot of people were talking about him getting a title shot after the Poirier fight. But now, with Swanson losing, well, there's not a clear-cut number one contender. So maybe if McGregor beats Dennis Siver, he can get a shot at Jose Aldo.
Listen to what you just said. If he beats Dennis Siver, he gets a title shot. Let that sink in for a second. If he beats Dennis Siver, they will give him a world title shot.
Well, as I was continuing, but I get your point.
Carry
what
on.
I was going to say is the timing to me is what's off. Because as of right now, Frankie Edgar probably can wait a week or two. He should be good to go. He did not take a lot of damage against Cub Swanson. So time-wise, Frankie Edgar is more in tune to rematch Jose Aldo than Conor McGregor is to fight Jose Aldo in terms of a timeline, because Aldo fought almost a month ago. So you add that in. Number two, Ricardo Lamas. Don't get me wrong, he's got his shot already. He derailed arguably the hottest fighter in the division with a first-round finish. He has a stake at a title shot as well, right?
Yep.
Now, of course, Cub Swanson lost, Dennis Bermudez lost. I have a feeling that that's probably going to be the next fight for those two gentlemen, a Swanson-Bermudez fight. Both were on huge winning streaks, got derailed. That'd be a good matchup. Now, if Jose Aldo is content on sitting and he doesn't want to have another rematch with Edgar or Lamas, I honestly would propose Lamas against Edgar, and the winner of that gets a guaranteed title shot. And McGregor, again, he should get by Dennis Siver, but I would like to see him take on somebody like a Lamas, a Bermudez, an Edgar, a Chad Mendez, maybe somebody else. The only way he gets his shot, Dave, is if Edgar or say Lamas is hurt or something like that, and he gets the call to jump in. But I don't think he gets a call right off the bat after. Again, he should be Dennis Siver, but that fight still has to take place. That's the only way to me he gets a shot soon here in next year is if somebody gets hurt. Otherwise, I'm looking more potentially, say, the end of 2015 before he gets a shot if he continues winning.
If he beats Dennis Siver, these people think he deserves a title shot. Dennis Seaver is 3-1-1 in his last 5 fights, including a loss to Cub Swanson. And in his last fight, he was popped for failing a drug test.
Which
But
is
now,
not his first offense.
correct, which is, and apparently now he's the gold standard to get to title shots. Frankie Edgar, at the time, was ranked number 3 by the media members, not by the UFC. He goes in and dismantles the number 2 ranked fighter, Cub Swanson. There's not a minute of that fight that Cub Swanson won. Not 1 minute of that fight that Cub Swanson won. He dismantles number 2, and they're going to give the title shot to number 5 if he beats number 8. I mean, none of that makes any sense. If the Bowling Green roaring the thundering herd, is that what are you guys, the Eagles, the birds or something?
The Falcons.
The Falcons. That's what it is. I don't know. If Bowling Green was the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, I mean, in any sport, Jim, if you're climbing the ladder, if 3 beats 2, the next thing that you should do is fight 1. Duh. I mean, you don't just get to go in there and fight Muhammad Ali. You have to work your way to it and beat the contenders on your way to fighting the best. And that's not what's happening. I just don't get it. Lamas, Swanson, Edgar, and Mendez will all run through Conor McGregor. That's a fact. It absolutely grinds my gears that Dennis Seaver is the gold standard all of a sudden in that division. I'm all about being exciting, but it grinds my gears. And to go to another point, can I go to my point on the media?
Go ahead.
All right. To Frankie, like I said, Frankie Edgar destroyed Cub Swanson, walks into the press conference, and these yahoos that are part of the UFC media, or the, I guess, MMA media, the first 3 questions for Frankie Edgar are about Conor McGregor. Are you kidding me? He just beat the number 2 guy in the world and deserves a title shot, and all these guys can do is lob questions at him, and they say, well, Conor said that he would fight you. Would you fight him in New Jersey? First of all, those are softball questions. Second of all, does he need to fight Conor McGregor? Conor McGregor needs to prove himself. Frankie Edgar has damn well proven himself.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's a timeline thing, too. If Conor McGregor did get the next shot, all right, let's put out that scenario. Let's just say he did, okay? Jose Aldo fought last month in October. Conor McGregor doesn't fight till mid-January. If a fight takes place with Aldo, when's the earliest that fight could take place? April?
Yeah.
Maybe May? I don't know.
Right.
So that means you're going to have Aldo sit 7 months out when he's actually healthy for once, when he could be taking on Frankie Edgar in February.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't get it. That's the biggest thing to me. Giving McGregor the shot puts the division back. It doesn't help the division move forward.
And right now the division is stronger than it's ever been.
Right. So there's no, like I said, the only way he gets a shot is if somebody gets hurt.
Right.
But in that case, chances are it'd be Aldo that gets hurt. You know what I mean? Let's say they book Aldo Edgar 2 for February or early March, right? There's a good chance Aldo could get hurt. If he does, They don't have to do an interim title fight, but let's say McGregor knocks out Dennis Seaver in the first round. Hardly any damage. Boom, there's your shot. Move him in against Frankie Edgar in that case. You know, that's that sort of thing is what I'm talking about.
Right.
That would be nice for him because I think Lamas said it too. Let's see him take on a wrestling-based fighter before he gets his title shot. I don't care who it is. You know, I threw out names: Mendez, Edgar, Lamas, Bermudez, all wrestling-based fighters, all would test McGregor's takedown defense, which so far has not been tested. He needs to take on one of those 4 guys, Dave, regardless of what type of streak they're on, to me, to get a shot at the current champion, Jose Aldo.
Right. No, you're right.
All right. Last thing, we got a couple of quick hitter headlines here. I saw that Ian McCall, his fight against John Lineker, originally scrapped from the Fight Night Uberlandia a couple weeks ago. That fight is back on, and I believe it is set for 181. Let me double check here. 183, rather, for the end of January. So that will be, and I think that is the Super Bowl Saturday card, correct, Dave?
I believe you're right.
But it will be taking place in Vegas, which, of course, the main event is Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz, and they recently added the co-main event of Tyron Woodley and Kelvin Gastelum. So we will see the Lineker-McCall fight, and again, big fight for Lineker, and if he can get by McCall, may finally get a flyweight title shot.
We will see. We will see. I have 6-year-olds running around because Thanksgiving is tomorrow.
Go ahead.
Trying to be dad and the juice.
Sometimes that's hard to manage.
Yeah.
Well, anything to add headline-wise, Dave, before we break down this UFC Fight Night Austin?
Yeah, let's my doorbell's rung for the second time and I have nobody to answer it. So how do we bridge this gap on a live show?
Well, I'll mention a couple of our friends here.
VigilanteMMA.com.
You can follow them on Twitter at VigilanteMMA. And, of course, we mentioned it last week, but if you haven't done it already, I don't know what you're waiting for. MMAinsider.net, brand new website. It looks great. Chuck Grace and the fellas over there did a great job with the new-looking website, so check it out, MMAinsider.net. You can follow them on Twitter at MMAinsiderNet. And, of course, we got to give a shout-out to our friend Ryan Pickup from MMAforlife.ca. And, of course, he won our counter-move contest. So he got to win the grand prize of the signed glove and photo from Eddie Wineland. So he did a great job picking the fights for UFC 180. So shout-out to Ryan. And, of course, you can follow him on Twitter. Always great coverage there on Twitter. So if you're looking for, like, Twitter play-by-plays and scoring and weigh-in results, he's on top of it at _MMA for Life. And, of course, Dave knows these guys. He's met them a couple times around Illinois, in Indiana. Bluegrass MMA, they're doing a great job covering the local scene here in the Midwest for the sport of mixed martial arts. You can follow them on Twitter at Bluegrass MMA. And, of course, you can check out their website at bluegrassmma.com. And they run a great podcast over there with Gary Thomas. He's the main host there and talking to all the local fighters there in the Midwest. And of course, we got to mention AJ Hiller at MMASignaturesUSA.com. You know, I talked about it last week. I didn't even think he'd have this signature. I actually messaged the website and asked, hey, do you have a Robert Whitaker? I've just been looking for that. And lo and behold, he delivered with a Robert Whitaker autograph, which I don't think too many people in the U.S. have. So he's got a lot of stuff coming in. I know he's going to several events coming up here. I know he's going to UFC on Fox. As some of you fans know, we already interviewed Joe Riggs. He's the one that got us that interview. So he'll be getting. So if you're looking for Joe Riggs stuff, as you probably saw in the interview, he's going to have Joe Riggs stuff. He's going to have a whole bunch of stuff coming up. And speaking of Kylan Curran, we'll get to her in just a second. She fought in the undercard of UFC Fight Night Austin against Paige Van Zandt. He sponsored her, so if you haven't seen it already, her banner has the MMA Signatures logo. It was on her shorts, and of course he got a lot of autographs and cool Fight More memorabilia from Kylan. So check out that if you're looking for some, or Kylan Curran, rather, if you're looking for some Kylan Curran stuff, he's got that. He just sponsored Tarek Safadine in his fight against Rory McDonald. He's got some Tarek Safadine stuff coming in, and he just got a whole bunch of new stuff. He's always got stuff of Dennis Bermudez. He's good friends with Dennis Bermudez, but he just sponsored him for the Ricardo Lamas fight. So if you're looking for Dennis Bermudez stuff too, he just got a bunch of that stuff in. So check him out, MMASignaturesUSA.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at AJ MMA Signatures, and it's all one word there. And of course, Black Friday is coming up, so you're probably looking for some gear. Well, we got two great sites that you could check out to get some great gear. First, TopRatedMMA.com, and you follow them on Twitter at TopRatedMMA. A portion of their proceeds go to the Hire Heroes Foundation, which helps U.S. Armed Service veterans find jobs here in the United States. So check out their gear there. And then if you're looking for something, if you are a female or you're looking for something for your significant other, look no further. Our great presenting sponsors, Fight Chicks. FightChicks.com, on Twitter at FightChicks. Check out their gear. They're definitely going to be running some specials here for the holiday, for Black Friday, for Cyber Monday, and check out their great gear. And if you're looking, you see a cool T-shirt and you think, oh, Fight Chicks, they just sell women's apparel. Well, if you see a cool shirt that they probably have it in a men's shirt as well. Dave and I both have a men's shirt from Fight Chicks, so they do have some men's stuffs too. But if you're looking for more of the fitness apparel and stuff, that's going to be the primarily the women's apparel there for Fight Chicks. So got that all the way, and definitely check out all those great sites, and of course our sponsor there of Fight Chicks. And other things that we got going on, of course, Thanksgiving is tomorrow. There's no UFC fight this weekend, but I'll give you a quick preview while we're here. Is Dave's taking some house duties. Gotta love a live show. And next week's show, again, will return Wednesday next week, which will be December 3rd. And we're going to be back. We're going to pick the main card fights for UFC 181, and that should be a lot of fun, picking that fight. And we're going to see if we can we're trying to get Alex White, who will be fighting on the undercard of UFC 181. We've had him on the show before. We're trying to lock up that interview here, hopefully sometime very soon here. We're going to try to lock up that interview as well. And then, of course, on the interview horizon, of course, we'll probably should be getting Darren Kirkshank here very soon for his fight against KJ Noons on the 12th of December for the Ultimate Fighter 20 finale. And by extension, we should try to lock up his teammate, and we just talked about her, Brandon Marcos, as well. So we're going to try to get those interviews for you guys moving forward here, and might be able to get some more interviews. As some of our listeners may know, I will be actually flying out to see Darren and Randa fight on the Ultimate Fighter 20th finale in Las Vegas. So I will be there live and in person, trying to score some autographs and interviews and mingle and go to Vegas and all that good stuff there out in Las Vegas. So that should be a lot of fun as well. So that's what we got coming up with the show here, Beyond the Cage. And of course, if you don't already know, I'm Jim Graham. Dave Sadler is my co-host. You can follow us on Twitter if you haven't already. I'm at Jim Graham, and Dave's Twitter handle is at Vigilante Juice. Always sending out tweets relating to MMA and non-MMA stuff as well, so follow us on Twitter. And of course, we have our great Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. Go over there, like our page today. We're always putting some interactive stuff on there. Of course, links to the shows. We have our UFC Top 10 rankings, or should I say MMA Top 10 rankings, as we rank all the top divisions in the sport, as well as a women's pound-for-pound list. So that's updated once a month on our Facebook page. And we also have our UFC Fight Pick results, which show our most recent fight picks as well as our current fight picks if there is a fight that week, and then it lists our record for the whole entire year, and those are under the notes section of our Facebook page. So that's all on our Facebook page. Of course, a whole bunch of photos of us meeting fighters and whatnot is over there on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. And of course, if you're listening live or listening to this on demand after the show has already aired live, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. Please subscribe. And we have a host of videos there. I think last time we checked, we had something like 135 videos, including past episodes. We have a host of some original YouTube content that we did before we started doing the live shows every week as well. And, of course, we have every single interview we've ever done on the show. Over, I think close to 60 interviews we've had in the show in the little over 2 years we've been doing it. So if you ever missed an interview or want to rehear an interview or just looking for something to do and watch some YouTube videos, check out that. They're all under our interview playlist. Like I said, about 60 interviews, and we're always putting stuff out there on the interview front as well. So that's on the YouTube channel. And then we also sometimes when new sets of UFC Topps cards comes out, Dave and I have broke some cases, as they could say, in the card industry, and have made a video and kind of display what each set kind of has to offer. And we've done one for just about every set, I think, since 2012, or almost every set. So if you're looking to see kind of what UFC cards look like and what's featured in some of their products and whatnot, go check out, again, the playlist there, the UFC Topps case breaks as well. So that's just all on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. So that's all the links there, and we're still waiting on the juice as he's trying to wrangle up his kids. For those of you who don't know, Dave is a father of two, a boy and a girl. They're twins. They're both 6 years old, and they got the day off from school, so he's trying to wrangle them the best he can. So a couple other, I guess, news and notes here. On the undercard, we'll get to in just a second, Paige Van Zandt. She was successful in her UFC debut against Kylan Curran, and she won. And of course, we interviewed her just before the fight. So if you haven't seen that interview or listened to it yet, it's right here again on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. And hear what Paige had to say as we got to interview her up ahead of her UFC debut. And she not only won her fight against Kylan, she got a UFC Fight Night bonus. So her and Kylan got some extra money in their pockets. So very entertaining fight. If you haven't seen it, if you have the UFC Fight Pass, that was one of the 2 fights on the UFC Fight Pass. So if you haven't seen it already, go check that out at the UFC Fight Pass, which is UFC.tv. So one other thing, speaking of the UFC website, I just signed up for their brand new rewards program, UFCrewards.com, or if you go to the UFC main website, I believe they have a tab there in the top heading that says rewards. So you can go that way too. It's free to sign up, and I thought it was more a rewards program based on stuff you buy, but it's a rewards program more based on kind of social media stuff, really. You get points on liking Facebook pages and retweeting the UFC and stuff like that, and you can enter those points in for different prize packs, so to speak, whether those be autographs, subscriptions to Fight Pass, subscription to the UFC Fight Club, a subscription to UFC Magazine, I think might have been one. You can also turn in points to get a pay-per-view or a bundle of pay-per-views. So that's basically what the UFC Rewards program is, kind of rewarding you for being invested in the UFC's online presence, more so than buying stuff and getting points for it. So I guess that's a little different than what Dave and I originally thought at the UFC Rewards program, but it is a rewards program nonetheless. But it is brand new, and who knows, I think in the future your UFC.com purchases, whether it be tickets and shirts and stuff at events, I think that probably will eventually be added to a reward somehow, because I was hoping, man, I just bought a ticket for the Ultimate Fighter 20 finale. Can't I get some points for that? Can I get 1,000 points for that? Huh? And it didn't look like I could. So unfortunately, I'll have to retweet the UFC 3 times a day to get 20 points or something like that. So yeah. Anyways, Dave, you're back.
Sorry about that. I'm here.
All right. Well, let's get to UFC Fight Night Austin.
I'm a part of the UFC Rewards.
So am I. I was just telling people I just signed up.
Yeah. I've retweeted. I don't have an Instagram account, though, so I don't get those points.
Either do I, and I refuse to. So, though I told people, I said I want to start my own website and call it Instagram because my last name is Gramm, just to see if I would somehow get like some type of lawsuit or something against me. But then I'd be like, how could you sue me? That's my name.
That's my name. Don't wear it out.
And it would have an extra M, so it'd be Instagram with 2 M's.
That's gimmick infringement, and that ain't right.
But it's my name. I wonder if I could win some money or something. That'd be cool. Maybe not. Anyways, I wanted to do it just to stick with them. That'd be cool. So anyways, let's get to UFC Fight Night, Austin. I kind of already mentioned again, Paige Van Zant victorious. What a fight that was, Dave. Paige Van Zant and Kylan Curran there, one of the Fight Pass fights. As I mentioned, Van Zant was victorious. Both ladies received the Fight Night bonus there, and eventually it came to Van Zant with the knockout finish. And I think in this one, Dave, one thing she kind of mentioned in the fight was that Kylan was, very aggressive, but really it was Paige that was the aggressive one. She was really pushing the pace, getting into the face of Curran, really not allowing her to get space and kind of use some of that striking that she's kind of known for to her advantage. And I thought Paige just on that night really imposed her will and did not let Curran get off. And surprise, surprise, Van Zant was able to not only get the win, but got a great position there up against the cage, started throwing some bombs, and got the finish.
Yeah, it was I thought it was a good debut. I believe was that not the second? That was the second fight in strawweight history, right?
I think it was the second or third.
I thought that was a good debut on mainstream Fox Fox Sports 1. I thought that was a good debut for the weight class. For those who aren't watching The Ultimate Fighter and whatnot. I thought it was a very good fight from both ladies. Glad that both ladies are brand new to the UFC and they were able to get their $50,000 bonus. So good for them. And as you were talking, Jim, I don't remember what site it was on, but our friend AJ Hiller had quite a bit of stuff actually.
Yep, I already mentioned that in our in your transition period away from the screen.
Oh,
because I had to fill airtime.
Somebody came to my door. They wanted to
sell you cookies.
No, they wanted to know about cleaning up my yard and shoveling my driveway. So I had to mess with them and be like, "Yeah, I might give you a call sometime. Never. How about that?" So yeah. Is all that stuff still available for AJ or no?
As far as I know, you got to jump on it quick though. Message him right away. I told him the Twitter and the website. So yeah, message that stuff right away. People, speaking, I know this is going up top slightly, but people really up in arms about the break the internet thing with the Kim Kardashian. Well, I don't know if I think it broke the internet, but the MMA section of the internet was kind of broken between the weigh-ins between Van Zant and Curran. We got two not only talented ladies but attractive ladies as well. As the internet was, they were going crazy. They were saying their computer was burning up watching the weigh-ins when those two stepped on the scale and then faced off against each other. So that was the MMA version of breaking the internet, I think.
Nice.
Anyways, one thing I got to mention, Dave. Somehow the big heavyweight fight between Olenek and Rosehall, originally scheduled for the main card, that got pushed to the undercard for some reason. I don't know why. It was very weird. If you were watching the main card, you expected 6 fights. You only got 5. Somehow that got pushed to the undercard.
Was it the very first fight that was only like 13 seconds?
The first fight of the night was the Wyman and Valley Flag fight.
No. Like the Puig Choi fight, but I was thinking maybe that was so fast that they wanted to make sure that they had enough.
Oh yeah, because that you were correct. That fight, which was right before Curran and Van Zant, yes, that was 18 seconds officially. So yeah, that could be why they maybe moved down the Olenek Rosehall to show another one on the Fight Pass or something. I'm not sure, but anyways. So when you look at our fight picks, it will say 3 and 2. We both picked Olenek against Rosehall wrong, but since it wasn't on the main card, it didn't count against our picks because we're only picking the main card fights.
Yes.
One less loss. But anyways, Olenek was successful knocking out Rosehall, not submitting him, Dave, like we thought he might be able to do, knocking him out, 321 marker in the first round. Awfully impressive for Olenek.
This is gonna sound terrible. I love Brian Stan. I think the guy's great. I met him a couple times. He's a great dude. he gets what like it's like he's whispering and he's so excited at the same time. Like when he was like, "Oh my gosh, he knocked him out!" Like these two big heavyweights. He just sounds ridiculous. Like it's not Rogan like freaking out or anything, but it's just when Stan sees something amazing, he's just like he's cautiously excited. Do you get that feeling or no?
A little bit, yeah. I get what you're saying.
It's just like I was watching it and I'm like, Joe Rogan would have done a backflip in his chair had that just happened. And he's like, that was awesome.
Well, let's get to the first fight of the evening in the lightweight division. Mike Wyman against Ike Valley Flag. Very close fight, Dave. I thought the first round, you definitely saw some octagon rust there from Matt Wyman as he was, pretty even in strikes, 41-39 total strike, but it seemed like Valley Flag was getting off the better of the two, and it took Wyman, I think, a little bit to adjust. And then in round 2 and 3, I thought Matt Wyman was, getting a little bit better of Valley Flag. Looking at the stats, Isaac Valley Flag actually outstruck Matt Wyman total for the fight, 120-104, and Wyman was a little more accurate, 104 of 140 total, whereas Valley Flag was 120 of 165. Neither landed a takedown in this fight, Dave, but Wyman had a couple of situations where he was close to a submission, and I think some of that control maybe pushed the fight in his favor, with two judges scoring at 30-27 for him and the other judge scoring at 29-28. I probably would have had it 29-28, the one judge, John Sorley. I was kind of surprised I heard two 30-27s. I didn't think Wyman was that dominant in the fight, but I think after that first round, Dave, he kind of woke up a little bit and kind of the same old Matt Wyman we remember before this long layoff.
Yeah, one thing I took away from this fight was both of these guys are gamers and they're going to get in there and throw down. But especially coming off of a layoff, these fights that Matt Wyman has are taking severe mileage off of his career. He doesn't ever have a clean fight. Those elbows, man, that's just shortening his career fight by fight because he always seems to get in those real, dirty street fight type fights.
But that was a fun fight and great kickoff fight, and it's glad to see Matt Wyman back. I think a guy very entertaining, and like I said, we kind of had forgot about him, and glad to see he's back. And like I said, I think he needed a round to kind of get his feet back under him, and once he put an entertaining fight and very close fight. I think Isaac Valley Flag had a claim to that fight, but I think Matt Wyman, when you add in the grappling and not just the striking, I think was the right pick for that victory. Next fight of the evening, flyweight division, Joseph Benavidez against Dustin Ortiz. And Dave, as we said, would the one-dimensional style of Dustin Ortiz, would it be enough to derail the number 2 flyweight in the world? And in this case, it wasn't. Not only that, Dave, Ortiz, again, with his wrestling, you would think, all right, he's just going to push the wrestling. He's not going to give Benavidez a chance to stand at range, move in and out, and throw his great striking combinations. But that's not really what we saw. Officially, Ortiz tried 9 takedowns, Dave, but somehow, Dave, I don't know why, he tried 0 takedowns in the first round. The first round is when you want to establish your will, impose your will on your opponent. Instead, Ortiz was content to let Joseph Benavidez pick him apart. And by that time, I think Ortiz was already, 1, damaged, and 2, maybe not completely broken, but a little bit saying, man, this guy's beating me up. I now have to go to wrestling. That's when you realized you had to go to wrestling in between the first and second rounds. By that time, Benavidez already had all the confidence in the world and knew, all right, he didn't try to take me down in the first. He's definitely going to in the second. So he's re-psyching himself up to take it down, and he just shut him down pretty much completely. 1 of 4 in round 2, and then 1 of 5 in round 3, and neither of those times was it a sustained ground control. It was almost instantly back up. And once again, it continued a slugfest for Benavidez, just pretty much throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Dustin Ortiz. And you got to credit Ortiz for hanging in there and not getting finished. But when you get outstruck 96-59 and you land those 2 takedowns with maybe 15 seconds total of ground control, you were not going to win this fight.
No. And that's why Joseph Benavidez is the number 2 man in the world at that division. He did give a lot of props to Dustin Ortiz for being able to stick around, having a pretty good chin, having good defense for whatever Benavidez was throwing at him. And, if you're the UFC, you kind of hope for what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of hope for that underdog story when you book these fights, Ortiz against Benavidez. But you didn't get a chance to see that, but you saw Benavidez, who is the number 2 man, go out and be the number 2 man.
The next fight of the evening, also in the flyweight division, Brad Pickett against Chico Camus. Very close fight, Dave. It ended up going to a split decision. Looking at this fight, I thought Camus, he came out the gate very strong. He looked really good at 125. He was moving around, bouncing around, was landing some very nice, powerful shots. Pickett, it seemed like he had a little trouble with the speed and the movement of Camus. Wasn't really able to get a takedown there in the first round. I definitely would have gave to the Rufus Sport product there in Camus. Then in round 2, very close round. I really think he could have scored it either way. I thought Camus did more damage. Again, looking at the striking totals, outstruck the Brit 29-20, but Pickett did land a takedown and was on top for maybe about 2 minutes there in the round. I didn't thought he did a lot of damage, though, and so I probably would have gave round 2 to Chico, but I could see the judges giving it to Pickett in that case. And then the third round, I thought Camus definitely was slowing down. You could tell that maybe the weight cut a little bit, maybe him bouncing around a lot, maybe a little more energetic, more quicker pace in the first 2 rounds. I think he started to wear a little bit, whereas Pickett, he was pretty much the same pace throughout the fight, Dave, and I think by the third round he was starting to figure everything out, along with maybe Camus slowing down a little bit, was starting to land some nice, powerful bombs there, and I thought he secured the third round. And when the scoring came out, we saw a 30-27 for Chico Camus, or for Brad Pickett, actually. And then, no, Chico Camus got a 30-27. I'm sorry. And then he got 129-28 in his favor, and then a 29-28 for Pickett. And I wasn't surprised it was a split, but I was very surprised to hear one judge, again, that judge I just agreed with, that John Sorley, then give Camus a 30-27. I didn't think either fighter won all 3 rounds. Very surprising on that, but Camus gets the victory, and a very big victory. His first fight in flyweight, takes out Brad Pickett. He moves. I think Camus is probably in the top 10 with this win, and he's a guy, maybe he takes on Benavidez next, a guy because of the new weight class, and he had a couple fights at bantamweight. He's a guy that could be a new contender in this division.
Yeah, Camus looked good at the new weight class. Like you said, Pickett figured it out at the end of the fight. How somebody gave 3 rounds to either fighter is kind of odd. I thought Camus won the fight. I think he's got crazy footwork. The cut didn't seem to bother him at all. He seemed like he had energy throughout at least 2 full rounds. And, maybe he was just overexerting himself. That's why he got tired. Maybe not necessarily the cut or anything. But, yeah, it's definitely it's fresh blood in the flyweight division. And him against Benavidez, they're on the same schedule now since they fought at the same event. So, yeah, I could get with that fight.
The co-main event of the evening was in the lightweight division as the King, Bobby Green, took on Edson Barbosa Jr. Looking at this fight, Dave, I think Bobby Green did have some success, but I think what plagued him was 2 things. One, his style, I think, with the hands down, I think did affect him because he got hit with some powerful bombs that maybe if his hands were up near his head a little more, maybe he would have dodged. And 2, he did not try to get inside too often, officially only tried 2 takedowns, was 0 for 2 on those, and really didn't even look to clinch that much against Barboza. He was pretty content to be at range, and for the most part, he was pretty successful. When you look at the striking numbers, very even. Barboza landed 54 of 133, and Green landed 50 of 123. So the output was very similar, Dave, but the difference was Green was landing some nice, jabs, some decent straight rights, and he definitely cut up the face of Barboza. But when Barboza was landing, he was landing potentially fight-finishing strikes, not with just punches, but with kicks. And to me, that was kind of the difference there. That if Green was gonna trade with them, and again trade rather evenly, he needed to do something extra to get the win, because the explosiveness of Barboza was definitely going to show, or most likely going to show, and probably get him the win if the numbers were close. And that's what this case, Dave. You look at the striking numbers almost identical, but you look at what was the more impactful strikes, what was closer to finishing the fight, and that was Edson Barboza, and he gets the unanimous decision victory here.
Yeah, effective striking, grappling, aggression, and octagon control. Effective striking is definitely what Barboza had in this one. 15 of Green's punches to 1 of Barboza's seemed to have the same. That seemed to equal one another. It seems like when Barboza throws a kick or a punch of any kind, that the fight could be over that quick. That's the way it seems. I mean, those kicks are deadly. And I think Barboza is the real deal. I said it before. It's Douglas Lima, right? He's the Bellator champ, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's nobody in the UFC that uses kicks like he does, other than Barboza. And when they start using those kicks to the body and to the legs, I'm telling you, that opens up a whole different game plan. Because you can practice getting kicked in the leg, but you usually have pads on. And getting kicked in the leg for real, you know what I mean? Like, that has to change your game plan. Has to.
And for Bobby Green, it's not like he was completely outclassed or outmatched in this fight. It's just the fact I think he needed to get inside more, make it a dirtier fight, not allow those kicks and punches to be as big a thing. I mean, he stood in there and took the best Barboza had to offer. I mean, I don't know how he lasted after that spinning wheel kick. A lot. I think just about everybody in the UFC's out after that wheel kick, and Bobby Green was still coming. Bobby Green's a tough dude, but like I said, he was avoiding a lot of the shots. I mean, if you look at the striking, the totals I read you, it's not like he was getting tagged every single second. He did a good job avoiding them. He had a good jab the whole night, but he needed to get in close a little bit more, use some knees, kind of tire out Barboza that way, instead of pushing the pace and making him strike from the outside. I think it affected Barboza in that first round. I think he was not planning on striking from the outside and circling a lot as much as he did. But I think by the second round, Dave, he seemed comfortable with it. He's like, all right, Green's taking control of the center. He's kind of tracking me down a little bit. I'm just going to let him do that, and I'm going to be able to strike from the outside because he doesn't seem to want to clinch with me and do that. So I just got to adjust myself a little bit here and strike that way. And he got the victory. And I think, Dave, him training with Frankie Edgar has taken his game to another level. And I think he's only going to get better training with him and Renzo Gracie and Ricardo Almeida, all those guys. There's even more guys I think I'm missing here that train with Edgar as well. But he can only get better, and that's going to help his grappling game, which was the weak part of his game. He doesn't really have to work on his striking game. That's already there. And now he was the number 11 guy. He beats the number 7 guy. So chances are he's going to be 7, 8, 6, somewhere around there, and he's on the precipice of title contention here.
Yeah, they have him. He moved up 5 spots to number 6 according to these UFC rankings. So yeah, I agree. His striking's on point. And when's the last time you saw Barboza's ground game at all? Doesn't even really need it as of now.
Let's get to the main events of the evening. Frankie Edgar against Cub Swanson. We talked about it a little bit. Obviously, Frankie Edgar got the win. He got the record day for the latest finish in UFC history as he kind of just kind of did a gable grip type of rear naked choke. They officially listed as a neck crank. You can't really see the tap. It's kind of covered up, and the ref's kind of in the way, but Cub Swanson taps just 4 seconds before the end of the 5th round, 4:56. And this fight, we said the X factor was Frankie Edgar going to stand and strike with Cub Swanson, or was he going to try to out-wrestle him? Well, we got our answer very quickly into the 1st round, and then the preceding 4 rounds after, as Frankie Edgar didn't put anything to chance and went into wrestling mode and completely dominated Cub Swanson. And this was not lay and pray wrestling. This was a Frankie Edgar we hadn't really seen in a while, really showcasing his wrestling, but it kind of reminded me, Dave, going back to like the Tito Ortiz days, back when he actually was good and would not only take guys down, but beat them up. And that's what Frankie Edgar did, or Matt Hughes, same thing, just completely active. And how do you like outstriking your opponent 259-62? And Frankie Edgar threw a total of 400 strikes in the nearly 25-minute fight to just 119 for Cub Swanson. If that's not being active, I don't know what is.
Yeah, what we saw there was a systematic destruction of somebody. You know, Cub Swanson belonged in that match, and Frankie Edgar just went out there. You knew that Frankie Edgar was aware that if Cub Swanson won, he was going to get a title shot. If that doesn't fuel Frankie Edgar, I don't know what would. It fueled him, and he went out there and he systematically destroyed Cub Swanson. And in my mind, he deserves the title shot, which we talked about, and which anybody who will listen to my text message has had to hear me talk about since it happened. If he would have went out there and decisioned Cub Swanson, I would have, I could have got with the argument, but he finished Cub Swanson, and he deserves that title shot, and if anybody else gets it, it's a travesty.
Now, again, I think Cub Swanson probably was prepared to wrestle, but maybe not to that level. I mean, 7 of 13 on the takedowns there, and he probably maybe expected Edgar to maybe stand up with him a little more, or maybe he thought he could be a little better in his jiu-jitsu, but again, Frankie Edgar, we know he trains with Edson Barbosa. I mentioned Renzo Gracie and Ricardo Almeida, both great jiu-jitsu black belts. He now has his black belt in jiu-jitsu, so I think he already had the great wrestling, but now these last couple of years he's added that jiu-jitsu, so I think he added in his takedowns with kind of the positional control that you can get from being a great jiu-jitsu player. He has really learned that, and I think in this fight he really showcased this because Cub Swanson is a pretty good jiu-jitsu player. I mean, he has a lot of submissions. You know, this is actually probably a fighter that came in to MMA with a better submission background than a striking background, but has developed into a pretty good striker. And if you would have said, yeah, Cub Swanson, he's a high-level jiu-jitsu guy, well, he did not look it on Saturday night. I mean, Frankie Edgar completely schooled him, and a very dominant victory. He gets the finish, and like you said, I think probably did enough to get another crack at Mr. Jose Aldo. And another thing I want to add about the Aldo thing real quickly, Dave, let's not forget, regardless of how much weight Frankie Edgar cuts here to get down to 145 from originally fighting at 155, that was his first time he ever had to cut weight in the UFC, and he fought the best fighter in the world at that weight class. You're not telling me that didn't affect him at all?
Mm-hmm. And
it had to have. To me, he's now had 3 fights since, all 3 victories with 2 finishes. I think he's figured the cut out. He has it down to a science, and I think if he fought Aldo again, a much different result and a much different fight will happen.
I couldn't agree more. Hey, speaking of Aldo, and speaking of Frankie Edgar, Barbosa trains with Frankie Edgar. Do you think that Barbosa could be a very good partner to mimic Aldo for Frankie Edgar?
I think so, and I don't think they were training together the first time around.
Right, because Aldo's got some pretty sick kicks. So, you know, just like Barbosa, and you know he's real quick like Barbosa. So that might be another tool that he's got.
Right, because really the only difference, obviously, between the two is that Barbosa would be a little taller and a little stronger.
Right. Everyone's a little taller than Frankie Edgar.
Right. Well, I mean, even than Aldo. Obviously, Barbosa's just a much bigger man than him. But, right. I mean, in terms of technique and speed and pace, yeah, very, very similar, and definitely can help Edgar prepare again for a rematch. So yeah, uh, excellent fight. We've had a couple of. I think we had a. I'm trying to think of the card that was kind of a snoozer. There was kind of a. What was that UFC 170? Not 178. 179. That one. Besides Mendez and Aldo, the rest of the night was kind of eh. And since then, Dave, I think the only maybe kind of dud of a card we had really is the Uberlandia. The 3 or 4 other cards we've had have been fantastic, and I think this one was another fantastic fight night card.
Yep. But hey, all those haters and the media. See what I did there? The media. I say that because me, Jim, Ray Flores, and a couple other people are different than that. You're doing too many cards. You're gonna oversaturate the market. I'm a fan of MMA, the UFC fighting. Have a fight on every day. I don't care. I mean, the more the UFC puts on a fight, the more people are getting paid, the more recognition the sport gets. All positives. Every fight can't be Bonner Griffin. We all understand that. But I would have paid good money to attend the event that just took place in Austin. And you're going to go to the Ultimate Fighter finale in 2 weeks and keep putting them on TV. That's what I say. These guys don't know what they're talking about.
Anything else to add before we end the show here?
There was something, but I forgot. Oh, yeah. Shout out to our friend Eddie Wineland, UFC bantamweight contender. Just had a baby boy this morning, about 2:30 in the morning. So congrats to Eddie.
All right, well, he is the Juice, Dave Sadler, as I mentioned earlier. You can follow him on Twitter at VigilanteJuice. I'm your host, Jim Gramm. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Gramm. I want everyone to have a fun, happy, and safe Thanksgiving holiday tomorrow. And that'll about do it for this week's show. For the Juice, I am Jim Gramm. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by those great people at Fight Chicks.